Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Eco of Life. Let's start. There is a person who always smiles, who always agrees, who says yes even when every feeling inside them whispers no. You've likely met them. Perhaps you recognize the pattern in yourself. The one who gives more than they have, apologizes when they've done nothing wrong, and makes themselves small so someone else can feel seen. Yet beneath that gentle surface rests a quiet sorrow, a psychological wound disguised as kindness, a child who never learned it was safe to be real. This is the inner world of a people pleaser. To understand it, we begin not with a definition, but with a scene. Imagine a young child growing up in a home where love feels conditional, where approval is given like a reward, but withdrawn the moment they cry too loudly, act too boldly, or ask too many questions. They learn that being themselves leads to distance, while being agreeable brings peace. Slowly, they start to bend, smiling when they're hurt, helping when they're tired, laughing when they want to scream. Over time, they stop asking, "What do I want?" and begin asking, "What do they need from me?" Because that question once kept them safe. Now, years later, that child is an adult. They work hard, keep friends close, always respond, always care. But something feels hollow. Their life is full of yes, yet empty of true fulfillment. They are tired, unseen, almost invisible, even to themselves. What's often misunderstood is this: a people pleaser isn't trying to manipulate. They are trying to survive in a world that once taught them authenticity meant being alone. The psychology runs deeper. At its core, people-pleasing is linked to what's sometimes called a fawn response, a lesser-known trauma reaction. Most know fight or flight, and some know freeze. Fawn is the nervous system saying, "I will make myself useful, agreeable, invisible, if it means you won't hurt me." It's an adaptive strategy, formed early, often in environments where confrontation felt dangerous, where love felt earned rather than freely given. So they learn to become mirrors, reflecting what others want to see. Emotional chameleons, adapting, adjusting, disappearing. And the cost? They lose themselves in the process. In modern society, this behavior is often praised. We call them kind, empathetic, such a good person, but we seldom see the strain. The anxiety behind each text message, the exhaustion from constantly monitoring others' feelings, the guilt when they finally say no, and worst of all, the quiet, creeping resentment that builds in the shadows of endless self-sacrifice. Here is the quiet truth. People pleasers don't truly want to please. They want to be loved. They want to feel safe. But love built on self-erasure isn't love. It's a performance. Prison built from politeness. Where does it begin? Almost always in childhood. Not necessarily from overt abuse, but often from subtle emotional neglect. Homes where feelings were treated as inconvenient, where boundaries weren't respected, where children became the emotional caretakers of their parents. A parent who only smiled when the child behaved a certain way. A caregiver who praised obedience but punished honesty. In these quiet moments, the child learns, my needs are a problem. My anger is dangerous. My sadness is a burden. So they begin to disown parts of themselves and become who the world seems to need. Helpful, pleasant, easy. And in return, they feel accepted, but it's acceptance of the mask, not the person beneath. As adults, they often enter relationships that mirror these early dynamics. They attract takers, people who love the convenience of their compliance. People who say, "You're such a great listener," but never ask how they're doing. "You're so easy to be around," but never notice their sadness. And so the cycle continues. They give and give until the well runs dry, until they wake one day feeling like a stranger in their own life. No clear identity, no solid boundaries, no true voice. Just a long list of things done for others. The tragedy deepens. People pleasers often feel deep shame about their own needs. Asking for help feels like a crime. Saying no feels like betrayal. Having preferences feels selfish because for years they were taught that love is transactional, that their worth comes from what they offer, not who they are. So even when exhausted, they smile. Even when overwhelmed, they agree. Even when breaking inside, they say they're fine. It's not just fear, it's identity. But what happens when that identity begins to crack? When exhaustion becomes too much? when suppressed resentment finally surfaces. When the inner voice whispers, "I want to be real," that is the start of transformation, the first breath of liberation. Healing from people-pleasing isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming honest. It's reclaiming your voice, your needs, your anger, your joy. It's standing before a mirror and saying, "I matter too." People-pleasers are not weak. They are some of the strongest people you might meet. It takes immense strength to carry the weight of others' comfort, to silence your truth daily, and still keep going. But that strength doesn't have to be used only for survival anymore. It can be directed toward rebirth. Healing begins quietly, not with grand gestures or sudden defiance, but with small, defiant truths whispered in the dark. "I'm tired. I don't want to do this. I feel unseen." These aren't selfish thoughts. They are the first seeds of awakening. For the people-pleaser, they're terrifying because their entire identity was built on silence. But you cannot heal what you pretend doesn't hurt. The journey starts with one realization. You are allowed to exist outside of someone else's expectations. Let that settle. You are allowed to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, even disliked, if it means being real. Because people-pleasing is, at its core, a form of self-abandonment. Healing is the act of returning, coming home to yourself. Not the self you curated for others, but the self that feels, dreams, gets angry, says no without guilt, says yes with intention. This shift doesn't happen all at once. For the people-pleaser, even setting one boundary can feel like emotional surgery. Saying, "I can't make it tonight," feels like betrayal. Not replying to a text immediately triggers anxiety. Saying, "I need space," can feel like they're starting a war. But that fear isn't truth. It's history. It's a nervous system still wired for survival, still afraid that any step away from approval means abandonment. And here is the challenging part. Sometimes people will be upset. Sometimes those who benefited from your silence will resist your voice. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because they weren't truly loving the real you in the first place. Let that be your compass. Any love that requires your compliance is not love. It's control. So what does healing look like? It's messy, emotional, full of grief. Because when a people-pleaser starts healing, they begin to mourn the years lost to performance. They grieve one-sided friendships, relationships built on pleasing, roles where their worth was measured only by sacrifice. But in that grief lies something precious. Space for the other. You are allowed to be soft and strong, kind but firm, empathetic yet boundaried, loving without abandoning yourself. You don't need to be harsh to be honest. You don't need to become cruel to protect your heart. You just need to remember, you are not responsible for anyone else's emotions. Say it again. You are not responsible for anyone else's emotions. Not your partner's moods, not your parents' validation, not your friends' insecurities. You can support, love, and care, but not at the cost of your own voice. This is the great shift from performing connection to experiencing it. From being liked for who you're not to being loved for who you are. When people-pleasers start setting boundaries, they often worry. But what if I end up alone? Here's the truth, you might lose some people, but you will also find people. The ones who see you, not your service. Who listen, not just speak. Who don't only take your light, but reflect it back to you. This is the paradox. People-pleasers fear rejection. Yet only by risking rejection can they finally feel belonging. Why is people-pleasing so persistent? Because at a cognitive level, it's tied to identity fusion. They don't just act in service of others. They believe that's who they are. Letting go of that identity can feel like death. But it's not death. It's rebirth. The difficult, beautiful process of becoming whole. Not a fragment of someone else's comfort, but a sovereign human being with opinions, preferences, desires, with the right to change their mind, to rest, to say no, to take up space. You were not born to be an accessory to someone else's life. And what about guilt? Yes, guilt haunts every recovering people-pleaser. They feel it after declining an invitation, after turning off their phone, after speaking their truth. But guilt isn't always a signal of wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just old programming reacting to new behavior. The echo of childhood saying, "Don't upset them. Don't speak up. Don't be selfish. The healing response? Feel the guilt and do it anyway. Let your nervous system recalibrate. Let your inner child learn that safety no longer comes from self-sacrifice, but from self-honoring. Now, let's speak of self-love, not in a shallow, trendy sense, but in the real, gritty way. For a people-pleaser, self-love looks like saying no without a paragraph of apology, resting without feeling you must earn it, walking away from relationships that only value your silence, asking, "What do I want?" before answering, "What do they need?" Choosing momentary discomfort over lingering resentment. This kind of love isn't always soft. It's revolutionary. It's the quiet rebellion of someone who has spent years being a mirror and is finally becoming their own masterpiece. So where do you go from here? Start small. Name your needs. Notice the patterns. Practice saying no. Disappoint someone and survive it. You will shake. You will doubt. You might cry, but you will also feel something new. Freedom, peace, clarity. Because for the first time, you're not acting, you're living. You are not a product of what others need. You are a person full and flawed and worthy. Let's end with this.
I'm sorry.
The world does not need more agreeable people. It needs more authentic ones. The world does not need you to shrink to keep others comfortable. It needs you to expand, even if it rattles a few cages. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be loved by everyone. You just need to be loved by yourself, and by a few real ones who love the unedited version of you. That is enough. That has always been enough. So, to the recovering people pleaser, take up space. Take back your life. You don't owe anyone your silence. You never did. Thank you watching my video. Please subscribe my channel. For more update,